Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. How are you identifying with a changing world? And that is, the title is shared as a general question and on a serious level. How are you identifying with the changing world right now? That means on one level, we want to look at how it's done. On another level, we want to know how it's possible. The concept of identity is very fascinating. Human beings have different explanations for it, but it seems that everyone's eyes is different. We're not 8 billion clones, even though we're members of the same species. We have different eyes. And so I thought to myself that throughout this life, I have called myself different ideas, different moments of being a person. And then at some point I was wondering, I'm like, the only reason I'm identifying with this physical body is because I'm aware of it. Do you see? Like, it's the speed of change. That means when it comes to a changing world, it's like, at what speed is it changing? It's the human being blows birthday candles, but are you the same human being? Is it the same self? And so it feels like right now, as I'm sitting on a porch, on a chair right now giving this talk. If the atoms of this chair that is holding me, if they started moving, if the world on if the surface of the earth wasn't stable, we couldn't even be here. So it's the speed of change. I feel a mind is when uh, uh, the mind is faster than the body. I don't know how to what the proper way of explaining it would be, but intelligence is more is faster. Yeah. Because if your body was changing before the time you had to think about a decision, then it's impossible to decide. There's a zone where the person is observing and then the decision comes. If that zone is not there, everything will be, what's the term, compulsive, you know? Sorry, not compulsive, impulsive. It's like you just go based on the impulse. Do you know? I had this problem when I was younger. Since my childhood, I've been working on. But it was this idea that I would connect my emotions to images, and the significance of the projection of meaning. So it means that sometimes when you take life too seriously, your honesty in the long term transforms into gullibility. And especially if you're in a street smart environment. I don't know. There's many ways life moves. When we look at the phenomena of life, it's event oriented. We say, that was me yesterday. That's going to be me tomorrow. This is me now. All these ways of identification, but it's attention moving as a changing world. It's just conscious over it. So, for this talk, I'm going to share my view on evolution and what really went on. And through that, I'm going to suggest perhaps, one man's resolution to what do we do in a changing world? How do we identify with the changing world? Four phases: UW, US, CS, CW. These four acronyms I consider to be the four phases of evolution going on in this plane of existence. What does that mean? The UW is the unconscious world. Before human beings were here, there was the world here, but we weren't here. There was no design, there was no creature on the surface of the earth and whatnot, or no creature that could be conscious. That is an evolutionary kind of, I'm honoring evolutionary science by saying it that way. Then it went to what I consider to be the unconscious self. So it wasn't just an unconscious world. The unconscious self is what I actually consider to be the objective evolution, creaturehood. There emerged legs and hands, limbs for this creature to now crawl on this earth, to move on the surface of this earth. Some people look at their shoes and they're like, "Are these really my shoes?" And some people, they look at their existence and they're like, "Oh my God, is this really my existence?" After the objective evolution, that means once there was creaturehood, that means that there was a creature there, but this creature wasn't aware of itself. And here I feel there were what I call loops in evolution. What does that mean? That means imagine like an insect or some small creature trying to crawl up a hill and it can't. It tries to crawl up a hill, it can't. Imagine how many creatures attempted to step in land until suddenly there was a possibility. The objective evolution is how an objective body emerged. The subjective evolution is how there arose an awareness to this body. That was an event as well. So from an unconscious world, there emerged an unconscious self, the objective evolution. And from the unconscious self, there came the conscious self. We became conscious of the self, but now the world is still unknown. And the fourth phase of evolution is where we will be the conscious world. That means what a species thinks is its extinction is the planet, the sector, the universal sector waking up. You see, the governance of intelligence is based on the quality of attention. The quality of attention for now in the human form is arising individually. Now, what has been the fascination when you go look at its ancient traditions, when you go look at what is the spirituality these guys are talking about, you go see that their spirituality is a declaration that the world is a simulation of a mind unfathomable. Now, some parts of the world, they gave a shape to that mind. They called it something. Some parts of the world, they didn't give it a shape. They didn't even call it a mind. Mr. Within, like I would say, my recommendation to secular culture is that the most easiest way to approach is as unknown collective possibilities. You see, this world is very fascinating and very intelligent, and this world is an artist. That means you don't have to be an artist in this world, but the world is an artist. You can see its artwork everywhere. Now, with this artistic vision in mind, it's as if, why is the world emerging events? Why is the world happening? What is the world doing? Right now we think it's all human activity that is keeping our meaning afloat. But what if there is a meaning that transcends the domain of the conceptual human being? What if we realize that when our attention changes its texture, its quality, its attention, the world has changed, has it not? So when we go to a conscious world, that would be when the answer to the question, how are you identifying with the changing world, is that you no longer need to identify with it. You are it. You see, you are nature. That is huge. That is like your access to the mystery of consciousness. You know, treating an idea as a tool then brings up the question, what is the tool being used by? And the human being, in regards to experience, its movement is its meaning. You know? Or let me say it this way, that sometimes in life moves first, and you notice meaning that way, or you move first, and you project the meaning. For example, when I'm driving a vehicle in the highway, that's when I am projecting the meaning. I declare, I know that I'm piloting the moment. I'm the life force in the moment that has to conduct the moment. But there are moments where I just sit and stare at trees and the sky and all of this, and I wonder, what was it all about? Was it that every person had to just stay in their inner cave? Or did we have to do something with these minds that we had? To be a creature of attention means you're noticing your presence. Many human beings go on their whole life not noticing that they are here because they are told to be something else and they're chasing something else, you know? You know what it is? It's as if like um, the son of a baker, okay? The son of a baker, back in the day, saw, for example, a blacksmith, you know? And when the son of the baker decided to be a blacksmith, for example, the lineage of bakers ended in that town. Honestly, life appears as a performance, a day-to-day performance, a moment-to-moment performance, a performance of a self that is aware. You know, there are many people who go towards the New Age community. You see, spirituality for a lot of people is the best excuse. Because the moment you're an eternal being, the moment you consider there's nothing wrong with you, you stop growing. This is why power, isolated power, it has the misery of only you being in that world. I feel there's many states of mind that human beings all around on a massive level, like a massive species exploration. You know how many human beings have explored different states of mind? You know how many ways human beings have looked at the sky and seen some meaning have seen faces in the clouds? What is that? that is where the identification of the individual is happening. Carl Jung really brings a lot of insight. And for me, Jung is a Western thinker, but many people have forgotten his voice. You know, that there was once a time where we cared enough to explore the unconscious, where we did not bog down in beliefs. You know, it's like you can sit on a belief your whole life, but that, you know, it's like even the belief will feel sorry for you. There was this story, this Indian story, okay, this Vedic story where this man goes, there's this guru in a temple or whatever with his disciples, and this is in India. And one day, this intense guy comes about. He comes into the ashram, he goes into the temple, and he goes to the main guy, the guru, and says, "You're an enlightened man. Give me the enlightened teaching. You know, show me you're enlightened. Show me. Give me a mantra." You know, the guy asks for a mantra, and a mantra is a chant. And the guy feels like, the guru feels like, okay, this guy's like, he wants it as if he's naive, you know. Sometimes your desires show to the veteran how much the new don't see. So anyways, this guy comes in and he's shouting intense and he doesn't stop. Endless persistence, as if like the guy was a salesman or a businessman or something. The guy had this intense persistence, and so the guru was like, okay, this is like too random. This random guy came out of nowhere asking me for a mantra. Let me see. Maybe something needs to happen here. The guru sits down, closes his eyes, and a certain chant comes to his mind. And he looks at him and he says, say this. The guy suddenly, like a kid who got what he wanted, now he's smiling, you know. He gets the chant and he goes into a room in the ashram, and for 1 week he doesn't come out. It's weird. Like, people don't know how he's surviving or whatever. But he's in the room, and the guy, all you can hear is just mantra, 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 mantra. He's saying, like, I don't know, what is it, like, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Like, the guy is saying some mantra repetitively, like a machine. That means that guy's persistence and endurance was honorable. Now, what happens is, after a week, the man steps out of the room and there's a glow about him. There's something different. And the guru's looking at this and the disciples look at this, it's like, whoa, you know, there's something's off. Is this guy like, what happened here? And the guy comes out and he looks at the guru and looks at the disciples and even looks at, like, I don't know, a cow in the yard and says, I see Brahman in you and Brahman in you and Brahman in you. The dude had reached a point where he noticed he was God, everybody was God, we're all God, yeah, everybody's God, you know? It had reached that point of inseparability of individual thing, he thought. Now check this out. The guru looks at this guy and he's like, okay, something still seems off, and suddenly it comes to his mind to give this guy a bag. He's been in the room for a while, and he gives the guy the bag of vegetables for the ashram, and he gives the guy the money of the ashram, and he's like, go buy vegetables for the crew, for the for the temple. The guy's like, I see Brahman, you know, in you I will do this, you know. The guy goes to town. You know, he goes to town and with his bag, everything he's seeing, like animals, wildlife, he's like, I see Brahman in this tree. I see Brahman in that bird. I see Brahman in the sky. The man saw Brahman. Now, the guy goes, as he's going to the market, suddenly he sees people are running away from the busy vegetable market. You know, people are running away, and he's just staring, and he's like, what's going on? And some guy comes up to him, he's like, buddy, don't go in the market. There's an wild elephant loose, you know, it's gonna hit you, you know, get out of here. You know, don't go to the market. And the guy's like, don't worry, kid, I see Brahman. And the guy goes to the town, and there's this elephant alone there, this abused elephant that's just gone berserk, you know, and the guy's just quietly buying the vegetables and putting the money on the stand, you know, getting the vegetables. And suddenly he notices the elephant is there, noticed him. The elephant comes close, and it's this intense moment where this guy has a vegetable bag. He has the vegetables in his bag, and the elephant is just staring at him, you know. And so he remembers, he says his mantra, you know, he says, he notices, he says, I see Brahman in you. You are Brahman and I am Brahman. And he says this to the elephant. And it's in that moment the elephant is staring, and people are like, "Is this a Walt Disney moment?" But no, the elephant grabs the guy and hits the guy, and the guy hits the stands, and he suddenly somebody is there that notices this, and quickly people come and take him. He's injured, and they take him to the hospital, and the next day he comes with a cast. You know, he got lucky that like people found him. The guy, the next day with the cast from the hospital runs in. His ego. He's like, "Your mantra was garbage. The mantra didn't work." Excuse me. The guy says the mantra didn't work, man. It was all a lie. What is this? It's like it's nonsense, this mantra. Why didn't it work? You're not enlightened, you know? And suddenly the guru starts laughing. The guru starts laughing, and the guru says, sorry. The guru tells the guy what happened. The guy tells the story of what happened in the market. Then the guy tells him. Then the guru starts laughing, and the guru says to him, "This is the moral of the story." He says, "You saw God, in the vegetables, in the elephant, in yourself, in me, in all these people in the temple, in the trees, in the sky, but you didn't see God in the guy who came and told you not to go to the market." And then suddenly he realizes his flaw. That really, if you want to establish greater trust, it's not ideological. You can't uh, free the human mind like a robot. This is why the new age kind of law of attraction thing, I was like, it's too robotic. It's too unnatural. That means what's natural is to realize there's the unknown and to face it fearlessly. The reason I brought up Carl Jung, because Carl Jung is a very revolutionary thinker, and he speaks about four archetypes that are very crucial to confront to kind of realize yourself. And let me see, I had a good picture for this. Now, this is important because I'm going to use these archetypes to explain to you that what's dawning on the species is a totally new relationship with language and communication as existence. Where is this picture? Okay, everyone, I found the picture. So, whoever's tuned in, look at the wallpaper. This is very important. Whoever wants to comprehend Carl Jung. Whoever drew this picture did a great job, by the way. I don't know who it is, but it makes sense, and I'm going to explain this to you. Carl Jung, uh, you can say similar to Maslow, felt that the self could be realized, and once realized, it can be actualized. But what was the way of getting the self to be actualized? I feel Maslow spoke about the external, outer realm, and Carl Jung spoke about the inner realm, how to go towards self-actualization. Here, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. So these four Jungian archetypes, okay, in regards to the inner realms, are very crucial. The persona is noticing your subjective self and how that is in a dualistic relationship, because language is a dualistic technology. Anytime the human mind experientially moves beyond language, I've coined the term the language threshold for that. But anyways, in Carl Jung's perspective, these were the four major Jungian archetypes. The persona is your conditioning, how you have become a person. Okay, keep that in mind. The various emotions you can have, the various ways that you can be a person, the various intentions or angles of view that can arise from you. Now, when I want to take your attention before to the shadow, to the anima and the animus. The anima and the animus, this really relates to the topic I'm discussing. How are we identifying with a changing world? Okay, the anima and the animus is the relationship of the human being in regards to confronting the male and female archetype, but confronting it as a sort of subjective possibility. So what does that mean? That means, let's say you're a lonely child, you've never had a sister. If you were to visualize your sister, that would be, for example, if you were a boy, you were going to visualize, let's say, a sister. That would be, you can say, an attempt at the anima. So the anima is the feminine reverse of the male, and the animus would be for women, for example. They have to confront the animus. For men, they have to confront the anima. They have to notice the gentle mind. You can say something like that. So that's one level where we can see identification is seeking a balance. When it comes to the anima and the animus, dualistic. When it comes to the persona, the smile and frown, dualistic. When it comes to the shadow, now the shadow is very crucial. If you look at this picture, you see that white self? That white self is in the shadow. Okay? And this guy can't see the real self. And the real self can't see its shadow, if you pay attention. So the guy is looking at his hands. And if you notice, the shadow on the wall has horns. So he has to confront the chaos that is a potential into the human being. That means one way I suggested this in my own way, a sort of inner exercise, was one day I was I was sitting on the porch, and I visualized the most chaotic version of myself and the most ordered version of myself. Just sat down and attempted it. I'm like, all right, let's see the most messed up version of me. What would that look like in my inner realms? And I was like trying to visualize what the best version of me would look like, with all authorizations in all contexts, you know. And so I had two these two images, these two archetypes evoke in my inner realms. I evoke them in my inner realms. And for a moment, I noticed that both of them were looking at me. They were looking at each other, and then they looked at me. That was the crucial point of the experience, where I realized I am neither my chaos, I am neither my order. These are just wings of the dimension, you can say. You know, Rumi says a bird needs two wings to fly. The mind needs chaos in order to function as a character. Like if everything was known, there would be no reason to exist. You know, there would be no meaning to existence because we already know the meaning, you know? So the unknownness of life is a strange blessing, believe it or not. But anyways, once you confront the shadow, and this all this guy needs to do is look at his shadow and look at how his shadow is on earth. When you realize what you think is bad about you or what you think is good about you as a human being are your inner realms, do you know, you'll notice it's evocational based on the environment you go in. That means it's like your attention is the head of the household of your mind, you know? So yeah, guys. So even Carl Jung saw an incredible complexity of the human being needing to confront duality in various dimensions of life. Our inner life is more mysterious than our outer life. Our outer life we can at least visibly see and touch, but when it comes to the inner realm, you could at most be the attention of it. It's like you visualizing two different memories and imagining those memories shaking hands to your sense of self from two different moments in your life and imagining those two senses of self shaking hands. The mind has such an ability, it can reanimate memory, and it tends to do so. Anytime a person remembers, the action of remembrance is like you're sculpting the memory again. You know, the memory is being refiltered, you know. What is very clear is that we are energetic beings. This is not a lot of people dispute this. You know, I mean, if you believe in a sort of simulation theory of reality, you can, I mean, it's disputable that way. But I'm saying usually every person alive right now, it's as if attention and energy are being simultaneous. Now, energy, people have a different sense and different relationship of it. People have there's a way you can, your attitude, which there, a certain energy comes from your attitude, you know, and a certain energy comes from how your attitude has paid attention to what actually is there. Do you know this life is like you open your eyes and landscape, there's a giant landscape, you know, and so as you live in this landscape, you start to notice, whoa, 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 there's even an inner landscape that is processing the outer landscape. When we human beings find a way to make the unconsciousness of the inner realms conscious, that will be a great human victory. Even though there's more unknown here than known. That means we're on a little island of knowledge thinking we know everything. I mean, if you really think of it from a very big picture, you'd kind of see human beings made their own language. So even though what I'm saying is comprehensible to you, what if an alien came here and I spoke English to it, the alien would just stare at me and look at my energy levels or something. So we do as a species probably, I don't know, in the next 200 years, maybe this might be easier for people, but we identify with energy at some point. You see, in thermodynamics, they say energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can just change from one form to another. Isn't that fascinating? So if we are identifying with the changing world, the world is the transformation of a potential energy becoming kinetic, potential kinetic, potential kinetic. This kind of like endless dance of form and absence. It's like existence is endlessly poking its head out of the unknown waters of non-existence. The attention, the best way I can recommend to people and to advanced communicators, I feel there is two types of people. All human beings, they fall into these two categories pretty much. They are either advanced communicators or they are pilots, pilots of consciousness. The pilot is very rare because the pilot doesn't navigate as an individual. So there's some human beings right now, I'm not joking. As I'm speaking right now, there are many human beings, not like that many, but there are some people in on this world who are living as fields of intelligence. They're not living as people. And as much as you can say in regards to personality, what happens to them, it's spontaneous. That means they are no longer instructing their mind. They have learned to watch phenomena through the stillness and silence of their being. That stillness and silence is the witness. I'm not joking. It's like, we thought we're just alive in the matter. It's like, no way, the space is alive. There's a huge chance. I feel that it's not empty space. I feel just like fish may feel water is empty space. I feel it's not empty space, and there's intelligent currents in this world. They're not personalities. They're not people. They're not entities. The game of creaturehood is for the creature. Keep this in mind, dear listeners. Because the story of man can go endless ways. And if you want to see a multidimensional man, that story can go endless ways. There is something that has to constantly ground it towards reality because that's where the action is happening. I consider conscious waking states to be the front lines. That means when I wake up, I am in the trenches of a strange existential circumstance. You know? And I can feel it. I can feel it as the days are passing by that life was never an image to hang on the wall and have that to be an eternal belief. This is not denying the unknown potential that, like, just like how we can see a phenomena being originated from mind and we can see a phenomena originated from matter, it's similar that this whole existence could be the neurons of a higher mind. Who knows? Who knows in what scale we are an ant and to what are we look like an ant? Who knows? As far as I'm concerned, life, there's a huge potential. I mean, life, you think life creates individual entities, but it doesn't create collective beings? You think in this life there was this much creativity and design for individual phenomena to arise, but not collective intelligence? I'm telling you, the collective intelligence is there. Man has not been, man's antenna was not at the right angle. When I say right angle, I don't mean like a right angle. I mean like the right angle. Now, one thing we can notice from the four major Jungian archetypes is that the Jungian archetypes are not content until they become simultaneous. Okay, that means unless the person is comfortable with themselves and their shadow, unless the person is comfortable with being, again, their self and their persona, and if the person is comfortable being their self, regardless of the animal or animus complex or relationship, do you know that means you gotta free your mind from the thoughts that have leashed it to a certain outcome. There's too many unknown variables. Sometimes in life, you gotta go at the pace of the world. Many moments I have ran too quick into and stumbled. You know. I'll share with you guys this, with the audience, a story of something personal that happened to me. It was something where in high school, I send in this very important assignment very late, and I'm like, because it was like, anyways, long story short, the teacher wasn't too fond of that, and so I'm taken to speak with the uh, principal of the high school, and um, because of giving it late and the assignment having a, few holes in the ship, you know, and so when I handed in late, and the principal came to me, and she said, why did you hand it late? Why should he? No, sorry, she said, why should the teacher mark your late thing? Something like that. And I remember at the time I was overwhelmed. I wasn't who I am now. I was way more extremely inert. And so I remember I told her, this is what I did, and I just did this, and I'm putting this in front of you to grade. And if you like to grade, please grade it. Something like that. Something weak. I said something weak. And it was such an incredible moment. She looked at me and she said, what kind of nonsense humility is this? And she told me that you should be saying, I worked for this, this is you, that's why you should look at my assignment. Do you know? That means I went with weakness. I decided weakness in that moment. And she was saying, why don't you say this is something you worked hard for? Please grade it. That means I didn't see the value of my work. Do you know? I didn't even see the value of myself at that time, you know? You know? It's like in the future, many people who are going to remember me in the past, I don't know how they're going to remember me. I was a very quiet person, you know? uh, but anyways, that was a very important moment. That was a moment where I realized I was in a artificial humility, and really it was a result of my kind of theocratical upbringing to some degree. Because you see, a man has to be his own power. That means if something else moves you, you feel like a lion who didn't kill the prey itself, so it can't act like a hyena and eats like leftovers. You know, so you gotta feel it's you moving, do you know? And I avoided that for a while. I avoided how I was here too. But then eventually you reach a point where you see the concept of self and world are codependent. That means you can't be a self without separating yourself from the world. That means you need the world to be a self. And the world needs selves to update. You know, there is no greater teacher than mortality. There is no greater self-help than looking at a candle and looking at it long enough and noticing it's melting. There is no greater teaching than a melting candle, physically speaking. In regards to the inner realms and what the esoteric can do, it's a symbiosis with higher dimensional beings. That's what it is, really. And it's us realizing that we are rhythms in higher dimensions. That means we're geometrical rhythms. We're geometry in higher dimensions. That's what I'm saying. Because what is the face? What does the face of immortality look like? How can you identify with the changing world? What is identifying with the changing world? People wake up every day and they're like, I'm a new self. It's a new day. Yay. You know, but tomorrow you're going to be another new self, then another new self. So we see this phenomena of us thinking that we're experiencing a new day is really what is happening is experiential level of going into deep sleep. That means existentially, you don't die when you sleep, but your inner realms go off. It's like the light in the room of your inner realms goes off. The attention is absent from itself when you're in deep sleep. Sri Ramana Maharshi really brought my attention to this, where he was like, do you suffer in deep sleep? Tell me, you who think you have an ego, you who think you're suffering, you who think you have everything or don't have anything or whatever, in deep sleep, do you have problems? Is there a self that has a problem? And then you wake up in the morning and you awaken to the day. Do you know? You enter as a self, as a subjective self. Albert Einstein has this quote. He says, we created time so everything doesn't happen at once. And I was like, no way Einstein went that deep. I don't know what it is. It feels like every day there requires a song to be played, as if the brain is an instrument, and it's like there requires to be some sort of piloting. Now the human being does this, and this doesn't mean you have to think 24/7. You got to have the same mindset. It's like, take it easy. You, you can't have the same state of mind at all times. It's impossible. You know? That means how long back in the day could the Imperial Palace Guard just stand? How long could he stand? Probably there would be moments where he would have to sit down, you know? So that's the thing. When you understand life is alive, and it's alive in known and unknown ways, and because nobody has your eyes, the exploration of the known and unknown is your choice, really. And the only advantage is we have free will, and this free will is a focus point for energy. That means if you really want to look at things energetically, how can energy suffer? The human being suffers. And the human being suffers because it knows it is an opportunity. And there is nothing more grand than to want to see an advanced civilization. Let me tell you why, guys, I'm inspired by this. It's like walking in the downtown area of your, local country. And as you're walking in the downtown area, being like, what are these small sidewalks and these gray, rectangular cubic structures? It's like, for how long are we going to live in, rectangle? And I noticed this is what I mean. That means imagine you walked on the downtown of your country and the government was like calling all artists and was funding art to make society beautiful. There's an example of this by the Medici family in Italy. The Medici family, of course, they were bankers and their motives overall for the world were questionable. But but the Medici family they did one thing smart. They were still human. They were still human. And they looked at civilization and they invested all their money to make the cities beautiful. Do you know? I was like, why don't we have giant mythical statues in our downtown areas of countries? Where have the statues gone? You know, where have the Michelangelos of the world hidden? You know, we need giant statues. You know, I learned. Anyways, imagine walking in a downtown geometrically fascinating. Imagine looking at hexagonal bricks. Imagine looking at bridges that are curved in mysterious ways. Like, you can totally see that there is so much room for the evolution of the shape of phenomena. And really, the mind gives us that ability. Thor's hammer is in our hand, and that means we have a mind right now, a domain of internal governance of the outer. You know, I in my science fiction novel, The Messenger of Giants, set in the year 5025, I created a situation where the United Nations has a galactic sector and it has an all life sector. It's an incredibly multidimensional book, and in this story, what happens is there's a cow giving a speech to humans, and remember, this is set in the year 5025. The cow is standing on its two legs and has some advanced robotic technology, and the cow even has a scarf on, a clothing. The cow in the United Nations sector says human beings have ate cows for so long, and so we need some sort of payback. Do you know? I think this universe left one clue about what we really are. And that clue is instantaneous being as awareness of attention. That is the clue. That is for me. I was really fascinated by the Niagara Falls. The Niagara Falls was like an incredible event of nature. It's like you hear the waves, the water, before you even go by near it. The attention is the mystery. Study your attention, and you have studied where life is happening. Even in my sci-fi novel, there's a section where aliens are speaking about racism of human beings to aliens. Actual aliens. You know, I'm telling you, we have enough for a civilization, enough knowledge to actually usher ourselves towards a galactic representation. What does that mean? That means if we make the user of technology, the pilot, become very aware of natural intelligence, and the technology becomes the component where it's the unnatural intelligence, and then the mixture of these two can is a new technology on its own, I would say. Of course, guys, this is I'm uh, considering the my sci-fi work here, but anyways, I don't know. If the world changes faster than us, how can we identify it? If we are changing faster than the world, how can we be identified with the world? Rene Descartes' mind-body dualism was the sort of conclusion. And we should no longer keep our inner realms hidden, because what's the point? What's the point of not sharing how else the world is moving? For a long time, I identified as a thought. When I realized I'm not a thought, that's when the contentment with the unknown could be truly accepted. And that's when you see your, I would say, the self where if everything was taken away from you, that self would remain. It is the presence of mind. Before we called it a mind. Before language, nature was alive. But it was alive differently. How are you identifying with a changing world? Or we can say, how are you identifying in a changing world? You know, this is why I think the idea of style comes into place, where style, its identification with the changing world, is an honest moment-to-moment feeling. Because if you feel you're okay, then you feel okay to share. If you look down on yourself behind your eyes, then why should others look up? You see, it's like I remember telling a friend, if you can't forgive yourself, why should others? If you're not willing, if you're not willing to care about your ability, why should others? This is why I realized there's no story to really tell. It's all about throwing mirrors. That means if this talk has been some sort of mirror for your own intelligence, you have noticed how you look at the ink on the page and the meaning arises. The ink on the page is just ink on the page. The mind is the projective instrument, where now man can wield, but you don't wield it as a thought. Moving your mind as a thought is rough, because the moment the environment changes and thoughts arise, you're going to keep wanting to stay in that thought. What does that mean? That means a belief is like a boat. And you go that belief is in a certain river. Now the person has to choose to get off the boat to see if there's another boat or there's another river and whatnot. Reality is incredibly surreal. We have ignored it. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'm gonna open it up to Q&A for 10 minutes. If anybody has a question, feel free to share. If not, then you are your own answer. Something that actually came to my attention to share before I end off the talk. I've spoken about the known and the unknown. Now we are either assuming that we are a known, uh, whose looking is known and what's out there is unknown. We're assuming whose looking is unknown and what's out there is known. We're assuming who's looking inside from inside is known and what's out there is also known. And the last, who's looking from inside, is unknown and what's being seen the world again is unknown. So what does that mean? That means pretty much all I feel all identities are passing through four filters of known, let's say cause, let's bring cause and effect into this. So here's the idea. Known cause, unknown effect. Unknown cause, known effect. Known cause, known effect. Unknown cause, unknown effect. Unknown cause, unknown effect is mysticism. We can say is immaterialism. Okay? Known cause and known effect is I would say that's materialism. Unknown cause to known cause to known world. How would I, let me see, how would I categorize these other two? If the cause is known, that means the cause is intelligence, so this would be religion. So known cause, unknown effect, I would say is religion. And unknown cause and known effect is, let's give that to science and the secular arts. Yeah, I think this is a good model to kind of see how the human being can identify. Because right now, I mean, I know what's in front of my eyes, but what's behind my eyes, I know a certain range of it. That means in reality, both the outer realm has unknown, we can't see the edge of the universe, and when you really look at the inner realm, you can't see the edge of the universe. That means an unknown creature in an unknown world seems to be, for now, still the best way to define. Because the moment we define it based on a certain image or shape or form, then it has been reduced. It has been made into a picture on a wall, like a stuffed animal. Like, you know how messed up that is, you know? It's like, I don't know. But if people truly understood evolution, they would see how all these species going extinct because of human infrastructure expanding all over the planet and destroying forests. It's like, I honestly feel we are the presence, the instantaneous presence of a moment of attention. And in accordance to how this attention moves or what it seems, looks at, it identifies and relates. And I feel in Zen, in like, for example, you take in the Diamond Sutra. In the Diamond Sutra, there's such a next level quote where it's keep your mind alive and free without abiding in anywhere or anything. So you are keeping your attention observant of all phenomenological movement. This is why meditation is just, it's not, you don't even need to call it meditation. It's just anytime a human being is still and silent, they will begin hearing the whispers of the logos, the how the mind moves before man. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this episode was helpful. And you have to tolerate your trust, because a lot of things the person trusts, he can't see the outcome. It's like when you open a door, you can't see what's behind it, but you got to trust the doorknob, you know? So if reality is perceived to have unknown dimensions and to be like a door, I can't see any other way than trusting the moment to see what happens to the moment. The moment the person doesn't trust the moment, they abandon it. It's this fight or flight kind of psychology, you can say, but it's echoing in our psychology in a way where if we feel rejected by nature, we will fight or we will succumb. So you can tell what kind of human being you are based on if your attention is on efficiency or inefficiency. Here's the thing. This is the one trick to wisdom. And I'm not saying I have wisdom, because really there's nothing to have here. Everything, we can hold a lot of stuff in our hands only to see we exit empty-handed. So there's nothing really objectively too much to glorify. It's just now we're realizing we are aware of objects and subjects. I hope everyone who listens to these talks, you go buy a notebook and you start caring for what your mind is doing and discover the nature of attention yourself. I'll say this one last story from Bodhidharma and I'll end off, guys. Bodhidharma was the fifth patriarch of Buddhism, and the story of him is very intense. This dude goes, like, he's enlightened. He goes to this emperor, this Japanese emperor, and the Japanese emperor has shared Buddhism everywhere. Like built temples and monasteries and created books of Buddhism and all this. And the emperor looks at Bodhidharma and says, Bodhidharma, I've made so many temples, Buddha statues. Tell me, what's the merit? What do I get? It's like, you know, like a hungry merchant, the king was saying. It's in that moment where Bodhidharma scolds a king. And Bodhidharma looks at the emperor and says, all you have done is foolishness, with an intensity. And he leaves. And the emperor's like, yo, did this guy, what the fuck just happened? The emperor's in shock. And the councilman of the emperor comes and says, sir, let me explain what happened. And the emperor is listening. And the wise councilman says, there was merit in what you did, but your attitude in that moment, you wanted to see it. That your attitude didn't deserve it. Many things in life you may deserve as a human being, but your attitude may not be the right frequency. Your attitude might not deserve it. Or how you're piloting in that moment might not deserve it. So Bodhidharma scolds the king, and he goes outside and starts meditating with, like, staring at the wall of the palace. Do you know how like next level contemporary that is for the time? Like and that's the thing. So Bodhidharma is meditating, his face inches away from the wall, because his mentality was, you see, liberated beings back then, they knew they were something else. Right now, we are doubting if we're something else, you know? So, long story short, many nights pass. Bodhidharma is in some samadhi, some deep meditation. And suddenly, one foggy night, this man comes, this man who's bewildered, this troubled person. He comes to Bodhidharma and he says, Bodhidharma, please help me. And Bodhidharma is in such a deep samadhi, he's not even an individual in that moment, you know? The guy does something extreme. Bodhidharma, gets up from his meditation. The guy cuts his hand. This is like really savage, but that's part of how the story was. The guy cuts his hand, and it's like in a weird way, hand in hand, looks at Bodhidharma and says, as a sign of loyalty, that was, I don't know why, but that's messed up. Like, I don't know how that was a sign of loyalty. You know. But anyways, that's how the story went. And what happens is Bodhidharma grants this guy an audience. Suddenly, like, looks at this guy, this mortal in front of him, you know. And the man says to Bodhidharma, "Bodhidharma, please help me." And Bodhidharma says, "What is it?" And the man says, "My mind is restless. I can't sleep." The dude couldn't sleep. His mind was restless. And Bodhidharma, this guy who's his hands cut too, like it's pretty messed up, you know. Bodhidharma looks at this guy. The guy eventually asks the question, "My mind is restless. Please pacify my mind." That's the words he uses. "Please pacify my mind." That's what the guy says to Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma looks at the guy. What does he say? Bodhidharma gives him a pacifier. No, I'm joking. He doesn't. Bodhidharma, in that moment, looks at him, and the guy's like, "Please pacify this restless mind I have. Please help me. This man's suffering." Bodhidharma says, "Okay, I'll help you. Bring your mind right in front of me, and I'll pacify it." And this guy is hit with a question he has never fathomed. He's like, "My mind? This mind that's causing my suffering?" Bodhidharma wants to see it. Where is it? He starts looking for his mind. His eyes looking left, his eyes looking right. He's looking for it, and he says, looks at Bodhidharma and says, "Bodhidharma, I can't find my mind." And Bodhidharma looks at him and says, "There, your mind is pacified." And it's an instant nirvana moment for that guy, as the story said. Goes on, the guy attains nirvana. He realizes this source of his suffering didn't exist. Now do you realize how free your attention is? An advanced civilization without tolerance, I don't know how people can even imagine it. That means there's many moments that you have to not raise your weapon in civilization, and let minds pass and continue their day. Do you know? Thanks for listening. Blessings.